There is a man standing in clear, cool water up to his chin. He has been thirsty for 3,000 years. When he bends to drink, the water draws away from his lips and leaves him standing in dry stone. Above his head hang figs and pears and ripe dark fruit heavy on the branch. When he reaches up, the wind lifts them just beyond his fingers. He is not dying. That is the horror of it. He cannot die. He was put here to want forever. And forever is a long time to be this close to mercy and never touch it. The Greeks did not fear death the way we do. Death, for them, was a gray country, dim, quiet, a little sad. Most of the dead simply went down into the dark of Hades and faded, like breath on cold glass. But beneath that gray country was a deeper place, a pit so far below the world that, they said, an anvil dropped from heaven would fall for 9 days before it struck the floor. They called it Tartarus. And Tartarus was not for the ordinary dead. It was reserved for those who had cheated, who had tricked the gods, or murdered the helpless, or reached for a power that was never meant for human hands. For them, death was not the punishment. Death would have been a kindness. The punishment was that they were not allowed to stop. His name was Tantalus, and once he had been the most favored mortal alive. He was a son of Zeus. He ate at the table of the gods. He was trusted with their secrets and poured their wine, and no living man had ever been let so close to the powers that made the world. And it was not enough for him. The stories disagree on exactly what he did, and somehow that makes it worse. Some say he stole the food of the gods, the nectar and ambrosia that made them deathless, and carried it back down to share with other men, as if immortality were his to give away. Some say he repeated their secrets. And the darkest version, the one the Greeks themselves shuddered to tell, says that Tantalus wanted to test whether the gods were truly all-knowing. So he killed his own son, Pelops, and cooked him, and served the boy to the gods at a feast to see if they would notice. They noticed. They put him in the underworld, in the water that will not be drunk beneath the fruit that will not be eaten. But the Greeks added one more thing, and it is the cruelest detail in all their myth. In some tellings, a great stone hangs over Tantalus forever, balanced, always about to fall. So he is not only starving, he is starving while he waits, every second, for a death that is promised and never delivered. We still carry his name. When something you desperately want hangs forever just out of reach, we call it tantalizing. We made his eternity into a pleasant word. He would not find it pleasant. If Tantalus reached too high, the second man reached for the one thing no mortal is allowed to keep. His name was Sisyphus, and he was the cleverest man who ever lived, and that was his ruin. Sisyphus was a king and a liar, and he loved being alive more than he feared anything the gods could do. So when death itself, a figure called Thanatos, came to collect him, Sisyphus did the unthinkable. He invited death in like a guest. He asked, innocently, how the chains work, the ones meant to bind the dead. And when death demonstrated, Sisyphus snapped them shut on him. For a time, no one on earth could die. Old men with mortal wounds simply walked around, bleeding, unable to fall. The gods had to send the war god to free death from a mortal's closet. And even when Sisyphus was finally dragged below, he had one more trick. He had told his wife to leave his body unburied, and then he complained to the queen of the underworld that he had not been given proper rites, and begged to return, just briefly, to set it right. They let him go. He did not come back. They had to hunt him down a second time, an old man hiding from death in the sunlight, clinging to one more morning. So they gave him a task that could never be finished, a boulder and a hill. He pushes it up, his whole body against the cold weight of it, to the very top. And at the top, it rolls back down. Every time. Forever. The cruelty is not the work. It is the moment at the summit, the half-second of hope, when he thinks this time it will stay, and then watches it go. He has cheated death so well that the gods made sure he would never, ever get to rest. The first two cheated death and the gods. The third committed a sin so basic that the Greeks made him the example of it for all time. His name was Ixion, and he was the first man ever to murder a member of his own family. He killed his wife's father, shoved him into a pit of burning coals to avoid paying a debt. And in doing so, he invented kin murder, a crime so new that no ritual existed yet to cleanse it. No mortal would take him in. He wandered, stained, until Zeus himself, strangely merciful, lifted him up to the halls of heaven and washed the guilt away and seated him among the gods. And Ixion, given the impossible gift of a second chance at the very table of heaven, repaid it by lusting after Zeus's own wife. Zeus shaped a cloud into the likeness of his queen to test him. Ixion embraced the cloud, and that was the end of every mercy he would ever be shown. He was cast down and bound to a wheel. A great wheel wreathed in fire, sometimes winged, and the wheel was set spinning out across the dark of the underworld, and it has never once stopped. He turns and burns and turns, with no ground beneath him and no end ahead of him. A man broken on the shape of his own betrayal, rolling through the black forever. This is what the Greeks understood that we would rather forget. That the worst thing is not an ending. The worst thing is a punishment with no exit. To want without end. To labor without rest. To turn without stopping. They looked at the men who tried to cheat death and decided the fitting answer was to take death away from them entirely. But there was another people, older still, on the banks of a slower river, who feared something the Greeks never dreamed of. Not eternal punishment, eternal erasure. They believed that after you died, your heart would be set on a scale, and if it failed, a thing with the jaws of a crocodile would swallow it, and you would not be punished, and you would not suffer. You would simply never have existed at all. Death Gods, Episode 3. The Weighing of the Heart. Don't let the fire go out.